comic books, movies, TV, and more. Nerds are everywhere. It's time to assemble! It's Nerds United.
Hello and welcome to a brand new Nerds United on YouTube. I am your host, Greg Mahochko. Joining me as always is the co-host of the year, Mike Luther. Hello, Mike.
Hello. Instead of trying to figure out where you're at, I'm just going to wave to the fans. Hello.
That's fine.
Yeah. Now they feel included. You know.
The next logical step would be like embracing for a hug.
Oh, little nerd hug.
I mean, for you and the nerdy Nimrods.
Yes. Yes. In case you don't know, that's what you are. You're a nerdy Nimrod. And we say it with love.
We say
years ago. I was say years ago, but maybe it was years ago. We had a poll up. I originally wanted. What did I want?
Nerdy
nincompoops.
I remember Mike wanted to call you the nerdy nincompoops, and I would not allow that. You're welcome.
By the way, I just want to tell everybody that's watching right now, we're having trouble with the internet. So if you see Greg's face or my face just frozen like this, nothing happened to us. We just have bad internet apparently in these areas.
I don't know what you're talking about, Mike. I'm not seeing any freezing on my end.
Well, Greg, I have a lot to talk about, but I'll talk about it on the podcast about what I've been watching recently. Hint, it's a trilogy of sorts. So tune into the podcast to find out what trilogy. If I remember to talk about it on the podcast, which, by the way, you can find at jitterymonkey.com /Nerds United, and then go to episode list. Look for it. You can find it. But no, what I wanted to talk about on this episode, this YouTube video right here that you are currently watching, I almost read another comic book. I'm not quite done yet. I have just a couple more pages, but I can still basically talk about it. That is, I'm taking my bookmark out right now, Alex Ross's Justice.
Classic.
Yes. Now, I'm not going to necessarily spoil anything because I might also be talking about this on the podcast for other reasons. That's a little hint. But essentially, this book, it takes all of or a lot of this, and they team up and go against the Justice League. And one of the reasons, and it's not just, they all come and they all run to the Justice League and they fight them and they punch them. No, what they do is they kind of manipulate the public. They do certain things where they make blind people see. Somebody who is in a wheelchair, they make them walk, and they say, hey, if the Justice League, if Superman is so great and Batman and all these people are so great, well, how come they've never done this before? So they kind of get the public on their side.
A little subversion.
Yes. And then it kind of goes from there. One thing as I was reading this that really kind of like, even if the story was great, but if the story ever kind of waved off a little bit, it was because I was staring at Alex Ross's art, which I actually didn't know about Alex Ross until Greg introduced me to Alex Ross. I believe with Kingdom Come, I believe it was.
Yeah.
And by the way, when Greg said, "Oh yeah, you have to check out this guy," he showed me his artwork. Check him out. I still didn't realize like how famous in the comic book world this guy was. Like I thought it was just Greg. I thought it was one of your friends. Like we were just gonna have Alex, for a barbecue one day. I was like, wow, he is really good. Yeah. Like this guy's really good. He could probably make a career out of this if he really wanted to. And I was thinking, I was like, I don't know, for somebody like me who didn't know who Alex Ross was, I was like, I have a hard time describing any art. Like, my way to describe art is it's good. It's okay. I hate it. I don't understand it. Right. His is definitely very good. On his Wikipedia, it said, and I don't have it pulled up right here, but it says something along the lines of it's like Norman Rockwell-esque combined with something else. And I forgot what the something else was. But I know it also talked about how he has...
Mike.
Yeah.
You had one quote that you had to remember from Wikipedia.
There's so much stuff in here that just, it comes and it goes. I remember stuff from like 20 years ago vividly, but if you ask me like, hey, what did you have for dinner tomorrow? I'll be like, I know I ate. I don't know what it was.
Norman Rockwell meets George Perez.
Yes. Yeah. So if you, and we'll talk a little bit more about Alex Ross. If you haven't checked out his stuff, do it. I also thought if I was ever like a millionaire, like a multimillionaire, I would hire Alex Ross because I can afford him. I would hire Alex Ross to like paint a portrait of like me and like my son, because I would just think that would be so cool to see. Like there's one. I should have looked this up already. There was one photo, and it's Joker. I guess spoiler alert, Joker's in here, but it's really weird because it's Joker and almost looks like he has a beard. It's in here somewhere, but anyway, all of this stuff is. I guess I can see this doesn't do it justice at all.
The cover of Justice does not do justice to the art inside the book Justice.
Yeah,
Justice.
So I was wondering, Greg, when did you first learn about Alex Ross, or is there any like comic books that come to mind when you think Alex Ross?
You mentioned obviously Kingdom Come, which is Justice is tremendous, and I love the art. In fact, very early on Nerds United on the Facebook page, the cover, like the Facebook cover photo was, and I hope you say you're towards the end. Are you past the climactic aspect of it?
Yeah.
Okay. So you remember that like the heroes kind of put on this armor, supposed to like keep, I don't know if it's parasites out or brainwaves or whatever. And that was the cover photo for the Facebook page, because I just love that image of the Justice League essentially in, suits of nanite armor or whatever material it was. But I still think, and you mentioned the book already, Kingdom Come, I think that is his perhaps best known DC story. But I honestly probably read that before. However, his coming of age, or his coming out party, so to speak, into the industry was his work with Kurt Busiek on Marvels. And I don't know, have I passed that one to you yet? Have you read Marvels?
That's no, I don't think you have yet.
It is a different look at the history of Marvel Comics from like the very first Human Torch, which had no association with the Fantastic Four. This predates Fantastic Four. It's just, an early comic book from Marvel. And it was a guy who was kind of like I don't want to say cyborg, but, kind of robotic. And as long as they kept him in some type of airtight container, he didn't, flame on. But, and this is like at a World's Fair Science Expo type thing, and they're doing this for a big crowd. But if you've seen the Daredevil movie, the guy who plays the reporter, Joe, the actor's name is Joe, I'm probably going to mispronounce the last name, Pantaleone.
Yeah.
Anyway, and now for the life of me, the name of that reporter it was right there on the tip of my tongue, and now but it's a famous reporter that shows up it all across Marvel Comics as they take place in New York City. Yes, sir.
Is it Clark Kent? He is a famous reporter that I know of.
No.
Okay. I mean,
but what this does is it kind of follows his career, and you get a different perspective. You get like the everyday like reporter, photographer, things like that. You get their perspective as these marvelous things are happening all around them. So you get the Fantastic Four, you get the arrival of Galactus and Silver Surfer, you get the civil rights and movement and the X-Men, you get Spider-Man, you get all of these landmarks from Marvel Comics through the viewpoint of these reporters who, they're working for the Daily Bugle, and wouldn't you know that when one guy has trouble finding a picture of Spider-Man, in walks, young Peter Parker. Hey, I just happened to get these pictures. I don't think that's what Peter Parker sounded like.
What's so funny is they say that like there's no original material, like everything has already been thought of. And I swear years ago, I thought of something similar to that. I thought that, not necessarily that exact thing, but I thought it'd be interesting to see a superhero movie from somebody else's eyes, So I guess they took that from my brain. I'll take credit for that.
So again, this is, since we've already quoted Wikipedia once, one of us accurately, Marvel's was a 4-issue limited series comic book written by Kurt Busiek, painted by Alex Ross, edited by Marcus McLaren, published by Marvel Comics in 1994. Set in the 1939 to 74 time period, the series examines the Marvel Universe, the collective setting of most of Marvel's superhero series, from the perspective of an everyman character, news photographer Phil Sheldon. Now, that was not the reporter that came to mind, but that's the one that, here we have. So.
Oh, and I will say, I don't know how much time we have, but there is a little cameo in Justice by Doom Patrol. And also, I don't know if you call it cameos in comic books, but that's how I thought of it. So as I was reading it, I was like, wait a minute. And Rito's there, and Cliff, and the doctor, which I forgot his name, but he was there. Yes, he was there.
Nigel?
Nigel, I believe. Yeah, he seems like a Nigel for sure.
I mean, he's British. He's probably got to be named Nigel, right?
Most of them are. Hi, fans from Britain.
I was going to say, we apologize. We know that while many of you may be named Nigel, many of you have other names as well.
By the way, if you're from Britain, if you're from Britain or England, number one, I don't know the difference between those two. I think it's the same piece of land. Wait, Greg. Also, comment below if you know somebody named Nigel.
And furthermore, comment below if you don't know somebody named Nigel.
But you probably know someone. I
have a Nigel story. And then I think there'll be the end of this podcast or this episode. Years ago, talking 4th grade, 5th grade, 6th grade, things like that. I had a buddy. We went to school together. He lived like one street over. And this was, it's going to sound weird, but this was the first kid that I knew whose parents were divorced. So, he lived with his dad and his stepmom, and he had a dog there, a big chocolate lab named Ranger. I actually went with him the night when he, went out and adopted Ranger, whatever. Nice dog. His biological mom lived across town, so I'd go over there sometimes too. And she had a little small dog. I don't know exactly what, but all I know is this dog's name was Nigel. And to quote a movie that we all saw very recently, National Lampoon, Christmas Vacation, this little dog had a little bit of that Mississippi Leghound in it, if you know what I mean. So it was always, shake the dog free, except you have to be careful. It's a small dog. You might shake it to the other room. So I too know a Nigel. It's a silly story from 20-something years ago. That's our show.
All right.
more coming up on the podcast, which we're going to go record right now. Everybody is probably listening to the podcast before the video, but if the video takes you to the podcast, that's great too. And we will see you next time on Nerds United on YouTube. For the co-host of the year, Mike. Yeah, that's right. For the co-host of the year, Mike Luther, I'm Greg Mahochko. Be kind.
And rewind.